Am I live or not? Yes, I think so. Okay, so the other day, one of my students told me that she sometimes finds speaking Italian quite difficult. And that's normal. It's frustrating sometimes because it takes ages to say a sentence. If you're here in the chat, please let me know. Do you empathize with the feeling? I definitely do. Because obviously, when you're speaking in your language, you need to learn. You need to kind of think of every word first, and then you need to translate, and then you need to put the words together, and then you kind of feel like that you're speaking like a robot very, very, very slowly, right? So this has definitely happened to me when I first started to learn English and even Spanish and all the other languages, now Japanese. So it's normal. So today, if you ever felt like this, you're in the right place, because I am going to share with you some fun strategies that can help you develop that kind of spontaneous speaking and less frustrating speaking skills that you have always desired, even though you're a beginner, especially if you're a beginner. Um, this is Ermy Pedata from thelanguageroots.com. And if you're here, let me know in the chat. If you are live here, let me know in the chat. And if you're watching the replay, you can let me know that you're watching these by giving a thumbs up to this video. Let's see who is in the chat today. So, ciao Bill, ciao Anne, ciao Ben. Yay, okay, great. So, I have definitely felt the kind of frustration that my students went through. Probably if you're here, you too, right? So, first of all, I want to say that this topic, this speaking topic, really excites me because, as I said, it's something that I have went through as well, and so I believe that I have something to give to you today. So first of all, can you let me know in the chat, why do you find speaking Italian difficult? What's specifically difficult to you? I can give you a few examples. So some people find it very difficult, find speaking very difficult because they have never actually practiced speaking, because they thought, if I am a beginner, I need more words, I need more grammar, I cannot speak the language. So in order to speak, I need to learn more. And then they keep learning and they keep learning. But it comes to a point that they are like to an intermediate level at understanding, but they still cannot speak. Why is that? Because they have never actually practiced the speaking. And so we cannot think that speaking takes care of itself if we learn more vocabulary and more grammar. You need to imagine it like a car, like when you start to drive a car, right? You learn the manual, how to drive, you pass the test, the theory test, but then in order to learn how to drive, you need to actually put yourself in the car and drive. And then you cannot drive just once. You need to drive a few times in order to feel confident, in order to develop that awareness of driving, that in the end, that eventually will make you feel super comfortable driving. In fact, if you drive now, if you have learned how to drive, I bet you don't even think about it anymore, right? And it's what happened in speaking as well, in speaking a language as well. If you never practice speaking, you can never get to that level where it doesn't feel you can never get to that level where it actually feels spontaneous. At the beginning it will feel frustrating, but the more you do it, the more you practice, then the more fluent you become. And so that's the first thing. So this is why some people don't find it difficult to speak, because they don't practice at all. One of the second reason that people don't speak, and tell me in the chat if you empathize with that, because I definitely did, it's that they find it kind of scary to speak to someone in another language because they're afraid of feeling silly and not be able to express themselves in a way that in the way that they really want to. And so in the end, they just kind of stop and they don't do it. And if you are one of those people that is actually kind of scared of speaking and feel anxious about it, uh, don't worry, it's normal, first of all. And second thing, after this live is finished, I'll link above one of the video that I did on how to overcome your fear of speaking Italian, and it's a live video, a live interview I did with Jonathan Huggins, the creator of the 30-day speaking challenge, and we have spoken about this topic extensively, and I am sure that you will find some useful tips and some useful strategies that can help you overcome that fear of speaking. So let's see what you wrote in the chat. And then I can move to the first strategy, especially if you're a beginner, you want to know the first strategy in order to learn how to speak Italian in a way that feels joyful and not frustrating. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look what people say. Hi, folks. Okay, so Italian people talk so fast. Bill, yes, Anne. Oh, okay. Bill, sentence structure, connecting words, number, remembering everything, etc. Yes, it's a lot to remember, right? Great. Okay. Yes. So, Anne, the first thing about Italian talking so fast, that's more about listening skills. So it's a good training to, obviously, speaking can go hand in hand with listening. And it's a good training, to things that I know you're already doing, watching films in Italian and turning your listening so that that speed kind of become normal. And about what Bill says, yeah, all those things to remember when you're actually speaking. It's something that brings me to the first strategy when you are just a beginner and want to speak. You know what you need to do is to simplify. If you're a beginner and you are just starting to speak the language, the first thing you need to learn is to simplify. What do I mean by that? I'll explain this with a little anecdote that actually happens a few days ago in my Japanese class. And we were having this little group conversation, and then the Japanese teacher asks me, what is your favorite country in Europe? Okay. And I wanted to say my favorite country in Europe is Paris. However, even though she had just told me the question and probably the word favorite was in there, but my mind went blank and I couldn't remember how to say it. So I said, okay, then probably I can say I like Paris. But then I didn't remember how to say I like Paris. So I said, Paris, it's nice. That was my easiest, the most simple thing I could think of. And that was it. That was just what I needed. I answered the question. I didn't say anything wrong, like off topic. So that was it. I simplified what I wanted to say. Rather than saying my favorite country is Paris, I just say Paris. It's nice. And that is it. That means to simplify. Sometimes in our native language, we want to say, actually, we use a lot of words that are not actually necessary. And we tend to overcomplicate things. And then when we come to speak another language, we want to translate everything into that second language, but it's not always possible, especially if you're a beginner. So what you need to do is to go to the core of the message. And once you get to the core of the message, that is when you start to simplify and just use the words that you need in order to communicate. To give you another example, say that you want someone in Italian say to you, what is your favorite thing to do in your free time? And you might want to answer, I am a very active person. I like to exercise. And in fact, I have got a gym subscription and I go to the gym quite often. Great. Now you want to say all of these things. And now you start to say, I'm a very active person in Italian. And then you get to the word gym subscription and you don't know how to say. And then you panic and you're like, I don't know how to say gym subscription. So what do? You simplify. And you might say something like, I go to the gym often. I pay the gym monthly, or I pay the gym every month, and I use it when I can. And there you go. And then probably the other person, probably if they are Italian, they might say, oh, you mean you have a gym subscription? And they might say the word to you in Italian, and then you will learn a new word. So simplify. It's a great way in conversation to use, also to learn new words. You can explain a more complex concept, or you can just use a few words to bring across, to put across the message that you want to say. So this is the first skill that you need to master in order to speak Italian, especially as a beginner. Okay, and so now what I'm going to show you is something else, because some people might say, Ermy, I don't have anyone to speak. Like I am the only person that I know that's doing Italian. So, I understand and simplify and all these things, but, how can I speak if I don't have no one to speak to? If you're all like this, type in the chat. Are you one of these people? Are you like, I have no one to speak to? If so, don't worry, I got you covered. So the first strategy that you could use to do that is to start with the things that you have and use your beginner textbook, any textbook that you have in Italian that is for beginners, if you're a beginner, and use the dialogues, little dialogues that you might find in it, and summarize them speaking. So you do a spoken summary in very simple words. I'm going to show you how. You're going to do a spoken summary in very simple words of the dialogues that you can find in any beginner textbook. This is a strategy that will help you to borrow words from your textbook, use them in another way, and start to talk about things that you're familiar with. And you don't need anyone to speak to at this point. You're just doing it in order to practice. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you, and I am going to show you a dialogue for beginners that I created. Probably if you've been following me on these lives last year, you will recognize this dialogue because it comes from one of the live classes that we did last year. So here it is. Okay. So this is a dialogue where you have two people speaking, obviously, and it's, guess where? In a coffee shop. So it's called La colazione di una cliente indecisa, the breakfast of a not very decisive client. Someone who cannot make up their mind, indecisa. Okay. And by the way, if you don't know, if you would like this dialogue, it's available. And just type, I will link the YouTube video related to this up here once the live finished. But after the live, if you just type in YouTube Ermy Pedata and then un, uno, una, which are all the indefinite articles in Italian. You will find the video. Okay, so the dialogue goes like, I'll read it for you. Salve, desidera? Allora vorrei un caffè. Certo. Aspetti, forse è meglio un decaffeinato. Va bene. Anzi no, vorrei un'aranciata. Allora, solo un'aranciata? Okay. So tell me in the chat, what's the dialogue? What they're talking about? What's happening? What's happening? Okay. So once you find out what the dialogue is about, and by the way, all Italian textbook normally have, all sorts of questions to work with the dialogue. So once you've done all of the questions to understand, now you take this dialogue and you try to summarize it, speaking the word, that's the key word, a spoken summary. You're not writing it down, okay? You're doing a spoken summary of the dialogue, trying to say in very simple word what's happening. So what's happening here? The person is ordering something, but then she changed her mind. She ordered something else. And then, the waiter just ask, is it only this that you want? Solo un'aranciata? So how about you now try and summarize this little dialogue in a couple of sentences, not a lot, just a couple. You could start a dialogue saying something like, una signora va al bar e. Una signora va al bar e. One lady goes to the coffee shop and then you continue. What could you say? You could say, she ordered a coffee, she changes her mind, or if you don't know how to say that, you could say, then she orders a coffee without caffeine, decaffeinato, and then she says that she wants an orange juice. And then the waiter asks, do you just want an orange juice? So you're just summarizing this in a couple of sentences, and you're doing it in speaking. Now, obviously, this is a YouTube live. I cannot hear you speaking, but you can type it in the chat. I'll have a look at how you summarized it in a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, let me go to number two. Number two. Okay. Strategy number two. What can you do? You can, once you've studied a couple of topics, you can make a list of short questions to talk about that topic. For example, let's say that you want to talk about your free time, and then you wanna ask someone, what do you do in your free time? And then you could ask, how often do you do it? What's your favorite hobby? When do you do this thing? And all these kind of things, right? So you make a list and then you just write this question in Italian, obviously. Okay. And by the way, if you are summarizing the little dialogue that showed before, remember you need to do it in Italian. Okay. That's for your practice. Okay. So once you have this list of questions in Italian, you put them in little cards. You write them on little cards, or you can use Post-it if you like. You can use little notebook or something like that. Okay, then you can shuffle these cards, and then you can pick the card and read the question to yourself and try to answer it. That's a really good practice to activate specific vocabulary on specific topic. And so if you don't like to write things down, Come on, who doesn't like to write things down? But anyway, if you don't like writing things down, there is another way you can do it. And I'm going to share my screen with you again to show you a tool online that you can use to do this kind of activity. So this tool is called Flippity. Bill, if you are in the chat, probably you'll know about Flippity if you're a teacher. So flippity.net is a website where there are all sorts of kind of games that you can play. So Flippity has got this thing called randomizer, and you can create one very easily. I won't go into detail on how to create one. There are loads of tutorials on the YouTube, but it's fairly easy. They give you a template and you just fill out the templates, in our case, with the questions on a specific topic that you have created. And then here is what you get. You get this little game, this little randomizer, and then you just shuffle it like this. And the question comes up. And it's like, di cosa sei appassionata? What are you passionate about? And then this is the question that I need to answer. And then I'll start to answer it. So I could say, sono appassionata di musica pop. I am passionate about pop music. And then I can expand my answer. I can do whatever. So this is a really playful way to just practice some speaking, some vocabulary on your own, or even with a partner, and without making it boring, because there is this element of random thing that makes it more fun. So I'll actually now do a question for you, so you can try to answer this question in the chat. Are you ready? So this is the question. Hai un animale o un cucciolo? Come passi il tempo con il tuo animale domestico? Hai un animale o un cucciolo? Come passi il tempo con il tuo animale domestico? Do you have a pet or a puppy? How do you spend time with your pet? Okay, what great question. By the way, if you are recognizing these questions and you are like, oh, these questions are kind of familiar. Yes, they are the questions that we are using in our next conversation group class next Monday, if you're in there and if you're watching. So answer this question in the chat. So how are we doing? Do you like this first strategy, these first 2-3 strategies? Let me know in the chat, and also give a thumbs up to this video if you are liking it. And if you don't like it, don't do anything. Okay, so let's go and let's see what you've typed in the chat. And then we are moving to our third and probably one of the most important strategy of today. So let's have a look what you got, guys. Okay, so okay, Billy says, Anne says, una signora va al bar e voglia un caffè. Okay, you meant vuole un caffè, poi cambia idea, she changed her mind, cambia idea per un'aranciata. Sì! Yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I meant. You try to make a little summary. Now it's in the chat, but you should do it speaking, right? In speaking. And use words for beginners, because you're using something for beginners. And you already activate those words rather than just learning them, and they are not just passive in your brain, they become active. Okay, so Bill says, lei chiede un caffè, poi cambia per un decaffeinato. Ok. Poi cambia per un'aranciata. Okay, yes. Okay, great. Was saying Karen Williams, forse meglio, maybe it's better? Forse meglio. Yes. Yes, it means maybe it's better. Okay, great. So this is what I meant, guys. So let's see what you have put for the other question that I asked. Hai un animale domestico? Have you got a pet? And this is la mia gatta, no gatto, dorme sempre perché è molto, maybe you meant pigra? I couldn't read that word. Probably you got the autocorrect on, and I know it's annoying. Oh, okay, great. So all of these things, as I said, you can do on your own, and you don't always need someone to speak. So don't make the excuse, oh, I don't have no one to speak to. At this point, you might ask, and let me get a sip of water. You might ask something like, Ermy, but if I just speak on my own, who is going to correct me? How do I know if I am making mistakes? And probably no one is correcting me because I'm doing this practice on my own. And I will say to you, great question. Okay, so at this point, I would like to share with you something very important that you need to be aware of. There are two kinds of speaking practice. One speaking practice is practicing for fluency, and I'll get into detail what it means in a minute. And the other one is practicing for accuracy. When you practice for fluency, the main objective of the activity is to get your point across and to communicate. When you practice for accuracy, the main point of the activity is to get what you're saying 100% correct in terms of grammar and vocabulary. This means that when you speak for accuracy, you're probably thinking more about what you want to say. You're probably correcting yourself more. And when you're practicing speaking for fluency, you are not thinking too much about the grammar or getting everything 100% correct. You are more focusing on speaking spontaneously and training your brain to use the Italian that you know and make it and turn it from passive to active knowledge. And so when you do this kind of strategies that I'll just show you, this kind of activities on your own, your first objective should be to practice for fluency. Then you can bring in also practice for accuracy. However, practicing for fluency should be your first objective because your main concern is to learn how to train your brain to think in Italian more quickly so that you are not constantly thinking of every single word that you're saying, and so that the words little by little will come out of your mouth more spontaneously. And the only way to do that is to just speak without worrying too much about, every single little grammar thing, and just worry about to communicate. Just worry about communicating and getting your point across. And so if you do, for example, the first strategy, which was to summarize a little dialogue in your textbook in speaking, just try to say it in a way that for you is the more spontaneous as possible. Don't overthink too much. Don't worry too much. Then you can, using the strategy I'm showing you now, correct yourself and become aware of your mistakes. So how can you train for accuracy as well for fluency? Because the main thing here is to find a balance between them. You don't want always to you don't want just to train for fluency, because if you just train for fluency, then you probably will be able to communicate, but you will make a lot of mistakes. And you don't want only to train for accuracy, because if you do that, probably you won't be able to speak as spontaneously as you'd like to. And so here's what you could do. Strategy number 3. Record yourself speaking. And okay, before there's everyone resisting to this and everyone is like, I don't like this, I don't want to do that, let me share with you. So use bookaroo.com to record yourself speaking and listen to yourself. Okay, so bookaroo.com is a really cool online recorder that you can use to record yourself, and it's quite easy to use. You know, there's this massive big red button, you just click on it, you record yourself, you just start speaking. Okay, and then it just gets recorded. You can download the recording if you would like to, or if you don't like it, don't download it, but just listen to it. Why? Because when you listen to yourself, you become aware of the mistakes that you make, that sometimes we don't really hear when we speak, especially if you are trying to speak as spontaneously as possible. And as I said, you're trying to train for fluency, right? Why do I recommend that? Because when, this is a little story about me, when I was learning Spanish, someone recommended this to me, to record myself speaking, and I never did it. And I regret it, because then when I then one day was forced to record myself in video, because I was starting this YouTube channel and I was watching myself in video speaking in English, I was realizing many mistakes that I was making, little mistakes that have become automatic. And so if I had taken that advice for Spanish and brought it to English as well, probably, you know, at that point when I started my YouTube channel, I would have spoken much better than what I was actually speaking in my video. But I never wanted to do that, because let's talk honestly, no one wants to listen to themselves, right? It's kind of weird, and you don't really, it's not fun. However, think about this. Think about what, that's one day when you will be quite old. When you'll be quite old, you'll have these recordings of you of speaking in another language. Wouldn't it be fun to show, like, as a memory, probably to your grandchildren, or to, you know, your friends, just to have a laugh? So think it about like this. You are making these recordings for you, and also they could turn out to be a quite fun material in the future for the people that you love. Because when you do this kind of recordings, you're kind of documenting your language learning, right? And obviously the main benefit of this is that the more you listen to yourself, the more aware you become about your how you speak, your pronunciation, the little mistakes that you make, and that will allow you to self-correct. That's what you want. You want to self-correct so that you can improve. So I would strongly advise you to consider recording yourself, especially if you've never done it before. And you know, if you don't like it, you can always delete it. Don't worry too much about it, but just try. Okay, so I have a little challenge for you today. Do you remember that little question that I showed you before about a pet? Hai un cucciolo, hai un animale domestico? Can you record yourself and send it to me? if you like, and I can give you some feedback about it. So that's your little challenge for today. Because at the end of the day, as I was saying, learning to speak a language is just like driving a car. You cannot learn to drive if you don't drive, and you cannot learn to speak if you don't speak. So, okay. And by the way, if you would like more guidance about this, there is a program that I run that's called Speak Italian with Confidence, and it's a 3 weeks program. And you can learn more about it in the link below in the description. And it's a program that helps you speak Italian more, better, and also with more joy. That's the main aim of the program. And if you'd like to learn more about it and also be invited to some free events where I show how it works, you can sign up in the interest list in the link in the description. And before going, I would like to make a little summary. So meanwhile, let me know in the chat which one of the strategies that I've shown so far you would like to implement first. Which one you would like to implement first. Meanwhile, I'm going to read what you got into the chat for me. On wrong keyboard. Oh no, I know, I feel your pain. So Flo, what you said? Oh Flo, hi, how are you? I haven't seen you in ages. Great advice. I always advise my students to record themselves. They listen to their voices, but it's the best thing to do. Yes. They hate listening to the voice. Yes. I know who come on. Let's be honest. No one likes that. But it's the best way to improve. And it does sound strange, but that is the best way to improve. And this is also what I use with my students in my programs, especially the one that I told you about, Speak with Confidence, because if you get feedback and you know where to improve, then you can make progress. If you don't know, if you don't listen to yourself, if you don't have someone to listen to yourself to give you feedback, you cannot progress and you don't know how to improve, right? So to summarize, if you're a beginner, what you need to do. Number one, what you need to do in order to speak. Number one, simplify what you want to say. So don't say a huge amount of things that are useless. Get to the point. Number two, use your dialogues in your beginner textbook and start to summarize them. And extra tip, you can actually change the story of the dialogue and create your own ending of the dialogue to make the exercise more creative. So you summarize them in speaking, not in writing, in speaking, okay? And number three, you choose topics that you choose a specific topic, and then you create questions about them, and then you shuffle the questions in cards, or you can use Flipty, and then like I showed you before, and then you can talk about the questions. And finally, record yourself, listen to yourself, and learn to self-correct so that you can practice for both for fluency and for accuracy. So that's all that I have to say today. Thank you so much for being here in the chat, and I hope that this was useful, helpful, and more importantly, I hope that this will give you a little inspiration to start to speak Italian now. Don't wait to learn more words. Don't wait to learn more grammar. You don't need more words, more grammar. You just need to speak. That's how you get to speak. Thank you so much. Grazie mille. E ci vediamo presto. Ok? Ciao. Ciao a tutti.